Men experience hurt in the space, and it's a range. It can be as simple as experiencing dismissive language or suggestive language.
Yeah.
And that can be from a plethora of people in the space that turns them away, but also even as graphic as sexual traumatic experience that happen inside the church, inside the church, that go often unsaid. And so one of the things that I attempt to highlight is that there are a number of experiences that have taken place in the church that men have experienced that go unsaid. And what it shows up as is that I'm going to go into the world and experience whatever the world has to offer. At least the world is more, I don't want to say honest.
Forgiving, lenient.
Real, yes. I think that's the
real.
perfect word. The world is real about what it is. And I think oftentimes, pastor, and I'm sure a number of pastors do a good job of this with giving a disclaimer about we are imperfect church.
Yeah.
Mm.
And the church is for the sick. And people hear that. And it's funny because like anything, the music and the initial interactions of people being warm, turn around, tell your neighbor, tell your neighbor, hug somebody. That has its allure.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Pied Piper. It has its appeal. But the Pied.
It's okay.
That's
We'll
all
tell
right.
you
That's
later.
all
Is
right.
that like Peter Piper picked
No,
the pepper?
no,
Piper?
we're not gonna do that.
No. But
How do you spell it?
Pied Piper.
Pied Piper.
Pied Piper. Piper.
Okay.
We don't also just talk about issues about Christianity, but we also educate the youth, like Wu-Tang, for the babies.
Educate the youth is
Caleb's born after 9/11. So.
No, I was 6 months at 9/11. I was alive.
Same thing.
So
but it's all good.
in this context of hurt, and we were speaking about it in the church, but that's a number of the, I believe, the situations that men navigate, and I would even say women navigate that often go unsaid, because if we could easily talk about this in context of women being shunned for their appearance, or even them being outspoken, or we can even talk about it in a time in which women weren't allowed to preach the gospel, and they had this fire within them, this anointing in them, and it was being regulated simply because they weren't men, and the hurt that could be caused around that. I know in this part of the conversation, I want to speak about how this hurt translates out into the world.
Yeah.
So how do we begin to deal with the world, and how do even hurt Christians outside of the world, not just navigate the hurt that they experience from people in general, but particularly people who identify as Christians? What are the ways that this is coming up for other Christians navigating other Christians outside of the church space? Because we don't do life primarily in church. We do life primarily in the world. And although we are not of the world, we are in this world. And I think that's very applicable to all of us.
Yeah. And I think that's where the realness is so important, especially now that we're in a time where like authenticity, it feels valued more. Maybe it's because of reality TV and social media, like everything's, like some of the veils have been lifted.
Yeah.
And when you come back into a church and it feels like the show, it's like, all right, this doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
And just based on that alone, for me at least, like if it don't feel real, I'm not gonna even position myself to be open to receiving the message.
Right.
So I appreciate that it doesn't feel that way, or at least it doesn't always feel that way here. And to your point about, I guess, bad actors or bad experiences pushing you away. I remember at this church, my first year, we were kind of like paired with like these mentors or like big brothers. We don't do that anymore. And this may be why. And I don't know if I ever told this story on the pod, but there was this guy who was like my, church mentor. Seemed like a nice guy, cool, whoop-de-whoop. And then one day I get a text that says, "Hey, you." And hey, you know that text.
I know they catching my face when I knew he's
send me the hey you text, and I'm just like, whoa there. So
Was that meant for you?
Yes,
it was meant for him.
And then
we do not discriminate.
No,
we're just highlighting.
But like
the moment.
And it's not even the fact that he was living that lifestyle, but it was the fact that like, oh, you're actually like finding young people who are coming into this church.
Yeah, it's predatory.
And you're preying on them.
Absolutely.
Now, I showed I don't know if we were married at the time. I was like, this is what I think it is, right? She's like, yeah, he's definitely shooting a shot. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
And so like, I could have easily, like, had I not known past like I do, I could have easily just said, all right, well, that's what that church is on. Let me never come back. And I'm sure a few people probably did.
Yeah.
Because I doubt I was the only person that ever got that text. And so just one person, especially a person put in a place where they have power. And I won't even talk about what some of the other churches are notorious for. It's like, how do you grow your church, put people in positions of power when you can't really police them like you would be? Like, you can't fire somebody really in the way you can in corporate.
I mean, Caitlin, I would love to hear your thoughts on the subject before I interject.
On what Keith just said?
Yeah, what are your
just
thoughts?
people, like just
still
people
digesting.
in general.
I'm like,
let's make it personal. Have you ever experienced or if you have an anecdote of hurt from someone in the church?
Yes.
And if so, could you, as much as you're comfortable with, like, tell us what that looked like? Because that was one that for me, I think could have caused my faith walk to go a completely different way.
Yeah. No.
Let's talk about dating.
Child.
Uh-oh.
We're going to need like 40 more minutes on
Christians dating Christians.
Please, no. Spare
2025.
me. Spare me.
Christians. And how you can use that Christian in the dating world to like be your...
Oh.
That's how I'm a hooker. I'm going to say
y'all about to see a different side of Kate.
I am a man after God's heart. Now let me holler at you real quick.
Oh my God. Because you're not really...
Have you experienced it?
Oh my... Have I? I live in Washington, D.C. and dating as a 24-year-old.
Well, all of our listeners don't know what that means. So,
child, D.C. is the craziest street you'll ever be in your life. Go to any other city. Atlanta, L.A., Houston. Don't come to D.C. today.
What?
Sorry.
It's treacherous, but I think we rival many other cities.
Well, it depends. It depends on what side of the dating pool you're on. If you're on our side, it's actually...
Oh, if I was a man in DC, it's a buffet.
Please come.
No, don't. Yes, but actually come because we need the ratio to be better.
Now, why do you say that?
What?
That is, don't come is treacherous. What's so bad about dating?
The men need to come.
Christian.
Because the ratio is terrible. But, so please, if you love God first.
You love Caitlin second.
I'll add my number to the bottom of the...
No, you will not. Oh, no.
Okay, wait. What was the original question? Church hurt.
Maybe in terms of dating, maybe not. But like
in terms of dating, dating Christian boys, that's always such an interesting thing because they do hide behind God. And then sorry,
no, go ahead.
To say it. They hide behind God, and then when they don't really live the Christ. Okay, should I pull out the Bible?
No, I mean, it's a church-informed, Christian-informed podcast.
So basically in like Colossians and Ephesians, I'm about to like paraphrase it.
Go
ahead. Okay. And Colossians and Ephesians, we know the notorious verse about like wives submit to your husbands, right? Okay. But if you keep reading, which I think is another way that people get church hurt, is people weaponize single verses and they don't read the passage. But we'll put a pin in that and come back to it after. But if you keep reading that passage, it talks about how like men should also submit to their wives like they did, like Christ did for the church. And ultimately Christ gave his life, which is the ultimate form of submission, like really, Yeah. So it's like, and also if you're like, oh, submit to your husband, what am I submitting to? Is this man following God? Because if he's not, I'm not about to submit to somebody who's just blindly wandering out there.
Sure.
So like, yes, there is like the willingness to submit, but, and going back to like the dating, I think it's like when you're dating, or at least like for me, because I like to date for marriage, when you're kind of trying to mimic or form that like dynamic of submitting to your husband while you're dating the person you're dating, I guess. I don't know. I'm not married, so I haven't gotten that far yet. But I imagine like in that process, it's like, we're not just going to be married and then I know how to submit to you. Like we're forming that along the way.
Absolutely.
And that starts with like being equally yoked. And so I think when like some men in the Christian church hide behind that facade of being a man of God and a Christian man, and don't really live that life and have a relationship with Christ. Like you can believe Christ died for my sins, but if you don't walk with him, those men look two different people. Those are two like completely different.
What do they
people.
look like to you?
One is like says that they believe right, but I don't know how to.
How have you been hurt by
I-
specifically? Let's stay on target with.
How I've been hurt by that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like being sold a false promise.
Mm-hmm.
So one says they're okay with your boundaries, they're okay with your morals, they agree with them. Actually, they believe the same things.
Sure.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like, okay, I'm living in that as a young woman of God, and then I look to my partner who's supposed to be my equal, and you're not also making that same step, then it's like, I'm like, wait a minute, do we believe the same things? Because you said it and I said it, but it looks like when we go to read the book, it looks like we're on two different pages,
Mhm.
you know? So I think, I guess generalized, that's just how I've been hurt. Because it's like,
Sure.
you're sold this dream of like, oh, like you find this person or whatever, y'all good Christian people, and y'all are dating and it's nice. And then all of a sudden the wolf comes out of the sheep clothing and it's like, it's a jump scare because it's like, this is not what I thought I was dating, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Does that experience in any way like affect how you view church, or are you able to separate?
I'm able to separate it because I have my own relationship with God. If I didn't, then it would very much so be that man and whoever hurt me and the whole church going down together. But because I know God for myself and I know he's a loving father, a companion, a confidant, like all those things, and I've experienced it for myself, then I know not to hold him accountable for a man's actions. If that makes sense.
No, it does. And
but I can empathize and see how, like, if I didn't, it would be very easy just to like tie it all up together and throw it all away.
Yeah.
Because now you remind me of that. When every time I come to church, it reminds me of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So.
And it's as you say that, I think of a very common, I guess, form of advice in the world. And that's if you want to find girls, go to church.
They say that for real?
You just need to go to the church.
I mean,
and there are other things.
I'll speak to that. I'll speak to that.
There are other things that are said about the women you may find in the church, that I dare not repeat. So,
and don't say if they're a pastor kid or not.
PKs are a whole nother level. But like, and that's it almost feels like that's the hurt that potentially the church put out coming back, or is it just the world, I guess, preying on people who maybe, I don't know, does church make you vulnerable?
It's both. And yes, it can.
It definitely does.
It's a two. It's like the word of God. It can be it can double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So to add on to what Caitlin's speaking to, I'm just one man, and so I can only speak on my immediate experience, and I can speak on how it, in some context, can be generalized. I think dating in the church space for both parties can be extremely hostile. For a number of reasons. I agree that a number of men can operate in a predatory manner in reference to seeing a number of women and using the numbers as an opportunity for them to explore their lust in this space. And I would also say that there are many occasions where that can be experienced for men, considering that the numbers are lower. There is an inherent pressure for a man who presumably does not have a ring on his finger to automatically show himself approved to even be not only dating material but like husband material, and that gets conveyed a lot in church spaces, especially like, again, I like to talk about Black church spaces because those are the spaces I occupy. And so the rhetoric around I'm Ruth looking for my Boaz, it comes up a lot. And I think there are a number of people who portray themselves a certain way, and that's not who they really are. And so like, as a man in this space, I'm attempting to, first of all, really just try to develop a better relationship with God. And along the way, if by happenstance I find somebody in that space along that journey, that's great.
Yeah.
But I can't even necessarily say that this is a genuine opportunity, because just like you may feel pressure of being sexually exploited, I feel like I may experience being exploited for the idea of me being this man of God and not seeing me as a human being. I'm already to be expected like, where is this going? I said, well, I just kind of met you, so that presumptuous of you need to be ready and ready to make a full intent. I said, I don't even know you like that, and you can't. Dating has not been properly taught in the black church space for a number of reasons, and it makes it hard to show up in a space where there's multiple women, and you see a lot of quality, and then to be expected to narrow it down really quick, that's a process. And even outside of like a lustful eye, it's like, well, God discerningly, like, who should I be giving attention? If I should be giving anybody attention in this space at all. For example, again, I'm going to speak a little bit globally because some part of my experience is global. I didn't grow up in the Baptist church primarily as well. I grew up in 3 different sets of Christianity, one of which was the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. One of the ways they operate in their church space is that men and women sit on the opposite side of the church. And not only that, the men and women are covered. Now, I know some people don't feel a certain way about that, but one of the things about that is that there's not to be a distraction in the house of God. The reality is, in the black church space, we distracting each other. If we want to be honest about it.
I've been distracted before.
Right, I've been distracted. And so, like, if you're attempting to navigate the hurt that you have experienced, but then also recognize that it is possibilities. And I recognize a lot of churches want to ensure the opportunity for people to come together and build community and actually build Christian households. Sometimes it's a bit premature. There's a lot of people, when you unpack like who they are and what experiences they have, they're not ready to have a healthy relationship, let alone a godly one, because they haven't had a healthy one with themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like, I think personally, there's a lot of pressure. And also this is the thing. Again, Christianity primarily for us has been taught from a patriarchal standpoint. So there's this sacrificial piece that is automatically expected of a man to show up. And the thing, he can relate to this because he had to learn this poem. There's a line in the poem called If. The things that you gave your life to. So if I'm to operate in that space with all the things in my life, but particularly ultimately a woman that I'm interested in, I'm saying that I'm willing to build a legacy with, I want to be very sure that she's worth giving a part of my life to. And that's not an easy thing. And that gets said I think that gets said so lightly, as if that is an easy thing to do. Like when I was teaching at JMU, I used to tell some of my students, I said, you've been taught not to give your body to just anybody. Men have been socialized not to give their emotional availability to just anybody, because it's not something to be toyed with. It's precious. Both things are precious on both sides, but that's the socialization that we've experienced. So in the context of church and how that looks like in the relationship context, the hurt is like, is this situation gonna be worth my sacrifice? Is it gonna be, is it gonna be, let alone if he's even has the capacity to understand, if he's even in a place for that, because again, we're all growing in that space. So all in all, what I'm saying is there is a lot of hurt around how we've shown up in these interactions, relational dynamics with each other. And even when dating each other, we're human, we're gonna make mistakes. But how we either reconcile or don't reconcile, that plays an even bigger role, how we show up, post that space. So that I say that those things are critical in how we are experiencing hurt with each other. Let alone to what Keith was saying and what to you were saying, is that how many of us are actually having proper reconciliation?
Well, what if you're not given the opportunity to reconcile? Good
question. I think unfortunately that becomes a conversation to ultimately that you have to have with God, because the offense may be by way of the will of the man, we have to go to the will of God to find some peace around the situation. And I don't think that's an easy toll because, again, from the context of accountability, it's like, well, what about my feelings? And there's a lot of challenge in seeing it beyond how you felt, seeing it beyond, you know,
because you experienced it from how you felt.
That's right, just right. And even in the midst of that, it's like, okay, well, God, what is when another Christian hurts me or another person hurts me, you know, what is the lesson that I'm supposed to get out of this? Especially when you feel like you're already operating in a righteous or wise manner, like, you know. And one of the things I've tried to always look at in the context of, I mean, Jesus, you know, by the accounts that we know of, Jesus walked this walk better than any of us, and he was persecuted, and he was talked about, and, you know, they beat him to death, all the things. So I try to keep that in context in all the things I experienced. That does not change the impact, especially to which we were talking about earlier, how some of the same people will quote scripture and talk certain things, present in these ways that's their church and informed in Christ, all the things, and they will cause unimaginable damage to people, and trying to reconcile between that, and for that matter, won't even necessarily take accountability of it.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It's devastating.
It's terrible.
It's devastating.
You said something that I think is important for us in the time we have to also address, though, the way you felt, right?
Are you about to say feelings are?
You already know where I'm going with this.
Oh,
and I mean,
God.
this is
Got the cameras
this is, if you know me, I say this all the
all
time.
the time.
It's very important.
Please.
But I think even in the context of church hurt is important. And that's that, you know, what I say all the time is feelings are not facts. And I think the important piece in the church context is just because what happened to you felt bad doesn't mean it was wrong. Right? I think there's an element of, hey, I'm and I'm offended. That's probably y'all favorite phrase.
Who is y'all?
You know.
Who is y'all?
You youngins. I think there's no, not women. It's the Gen Zers or whatever Gen.
Not
it's
too
like
much. I identify as a millennial.
Okay, that's not how time works. But I think
it's 2025. I can identify as a millennial.
Like even Jesus, right? Like Jesus didn't always like talk nice to people.
It's real. He did build a.
And I think we sometimes we try to conflate nice with good, and good don't always feel good. Right? It doesn't. It's not always pleasant. Like my daughter, sometimes like they've learned how to tell me, I didn't like the way you said that, or you said that, it made me feel bad, and I have to remind them, like, my job isn't always to say what's going to make you feel good.
Yeah,
my job is to teach you the things that you need to know.
Yeah, so
that you can move in the world without me. And I think we come to church and we want to grow, and we want to grow closer to God. We want to grow to be more like God. But I think we also, because we've had this, I don't know, maybe it's the rosy picture that we put in our head of what church is supposed to be like, how nice it is and pleasant, solve all my problems. Yeah. Like, but that takes work.
Yeah.
Right? I think of church not so much like it's not a party. It's more like the gym to me. Like I'm going there I'm going there so I can be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that I can grow.
It's not a party.
So that I can be better and I can do the things I want to do.
That's good merch.
Why was I thinking a t-shirt? Why was I thinking a t-shirt?
Yeah. I mean, let me trademark that before y'all.
Yeah, no, that's good merch.
But no, if you go to the gym, and you never hurt, you might as well have stayed home.
Yeah. See, I agree. I want to interject on that. But how many of us go to the gym?
Oh, that's a whole nother conversation. But even if you go to work, like I think we have an understanding.
In work.
I think most of and I
listen. No, if we go throw
you're right.
I'm gonna challenge somebody.
This is when I sound like the generation before us. A lot of people just want results without
The word.
the pain and
That's right.
the
That's
failures and
That's right.
the
That's right.
the frustration, and those are the process. I'm not in love with the process like some of my favorite athletes are,
Yeah, you gotta follow with the process.
but I recognize that
It's
it's
crazy.
necessary, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like my daughters don't always want to go to karate, but when they got the yellow belt, it was like hey, remember the times you didn't want to come?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see how good you feel right now?
Yeah.
Remember that next time you don't want to come.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But people want to come to church and want everybody to be nice, want the pastor to never say anything uncomfortable,
Yeah. Yeah.
never challenge their lifestyle,
Yeah.
never challenge their habits, never have to do anything financially uncomfortable. But you want like the trophy.
Yeah.
It's their fix. Like they're not looking to, like you said, truly be like changed. They're looking to have that high,
Yeah.
but a high that doesn't make them feel guilty.
Right.
You know?
And so like I say all that to say some of that church discomfort, like don't just immediately throw it into like the church hurt category. Like, oh, this is the church, being unaccepting. And be like, no, they trying to hold you to a standard.
That's real. That's so real. Wow.
That's okay. That's good for you actually.
Yes.
And I'll say this: speaking of a standard, we are charged with a standard. We have run out of time, ladies and gentlemen, and I would love to continue this conversation about the various ways that church hurt is impacted.
That's why you the producer. You
our experiences. And I tell you what, the way that we can continue this conversation is that you all engage us on all the various platforms that Save This is a part of. At Save This podcast, Instagram. Y'all help me out because I'm not used to saying the various platforms.
At Saved Ish Pod. That's
Yes.
I hit the mic. Sorry. Saved Ish Pod. On all platforms, YouTube. I think we have X. We definitely have what's that called? Instagram.
Yeah.
And and if you are an extra special young man of God,
all right,
go ahead and find my Instagram.
I ain't mad at it.
Hey, shoot or shoot.
We need more women to shoot in 2025.
You know what I'm saying?
Leave
That's
the
a whole
ambiguity out the
episode by
door.
itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, don't feel scared. Anyways, see y'all next time. Write us in with some questions if you want us to talk about something else. I definitely stole the mic from you.
It's fine.
But
I said, help me, neighbor.
And engage a dialogue with us. I'm sure there were things said you didn't necessarily agree with, or and I listen to podcasts. There's something I wish somebody would have added.
Yeah.
So like, let us know, man. Throw it in the comments. Shoot us an email, and we want to make sure we allow you to participate in this conversation.
Shake our table, please.
Not too much.
Or flip it like Jesus. But no, thank y'all for listening, and see y'all next time.
Peace.